You earn more than your parents did. For many people, significantly more. Yet financial security often feels further away than ever. A house that once seemed achievable now feels increasingly out of reach. Children's education continues to get more expensive. And supporting aging parents remains both a responsibility and a financial commitment. The strange part is that this story is remarkably common. Across professions, across cities, across income levels. People are earning more, yet many feel as though they are constantly trying to catch up, as if the finish line keeps moving just as they get closer to it. Inflation matters, housing prices matter, education costs matter. But perhaps they are only part of the story, because something else has changed, the benchmark against which we measure our lives. And once the benchmark changes, even success can begin to feel like failure. To understand why earning more no longer feels like enough, we first need to understand who we are comparing ourselves to. Consider something simple. A few years ago, a vacation to the Maldives or Mauritius felt aspirational for many middle-class families. People saved for it, planned for it, looked forward to it. Today, many of those same destinations no longer carry the same emotional weight. Not because the experience changed, but because our frame of reference changed. Every day we are exposed to luxury resorts, private islands, and lifestyles that only a tiny fraction of humanity actually lives. The vacation didn't change, the comparison changed. The same thing happened with success itself. A few years ago, owning a premium SUV could make you one of the most successful people in many social circles. Today, after endless exposure to luxury lifestyles online, the same vehicle often struggles to generate the same admiration. The car didn't change, the comparison changed. Perhaps that's the real shift. Not in our income, not in our achievements, but in the people we measure ourselves against. Our incomes remain local, but our aspirations have become global. And when aspirations become limitless, what happens to desire itself? Have you ever spent an entire week thinking about a cafe or destination you discovered online? Looking at photos, watching reviews, planning the visit, imagining the experience. And when you finally get there, take the pictures, post the story, upload the reel, somehow the experience feels smaller than you expected. Not because the food was bad, but because you had already experienced it through the eyes of other people. The same pattern appears everywhere. The phone you desperately wanted, the promotion you worked toward, the vacation you spent weeks planning. Remember how satisfying it felt when you finally got it? Now remember how long that feeling lasted. A few weeks, a few days, sometimes only a few hours. The object changed, the feeling rarely did. And if getting what we want rarely satisfies us for long, why are some companies becoming remarkably good at predicting what we will want next? A few decades ago, companies could only guess what people wanted. A television advertisement reached millions of people. Most ignored it. Some paid attention. Nobody really knew who would buy. Today, every click, every search, every purchase, every video watched until the end, every video skipped after 3 seconds, leaves behind a signal, a clue about what captures your attention. Perhaps you've experienced this yourself. You discuss a future vacation with a friend or your partner, without typing a single search, without opening a travel website. Yet travel destinations, hotels, and itineraries soon seem to appear everywhere. The digital world increasingly understands what captures our attention. Sometimes before we fully understand it ourselves, the most valuable companies in the world are no longer merely trying to understand what people want. They are increasingly trying to predict it. And prediction is power, because if systems become good at predicting what captures our attention, what happens when they begin shaping how we perceive reality itself? Consider Kanhoji Angre. For decades he challenged European naval powers in Indian waters and remained undefeated. Yet millions know European admirals from that era. Far fewer know his name. Consider Bakhtiar Khilji. Many know him for the destruction of Nalanda and Vikramashila. Far fewer know how the same expedition ended. Defeated by the forces of the Kamrup kingdom, his campaign collapsed. Consider Winston Churchill. In Europe, He is remembered as the leader who helped defeat Nazi Germany. Across much of the colonized world, he is remembered very differently. A man many hold responsible for more deaths during the Bengal famine than the villain he fought against. One story became global memory. Other stories remained local memory. Who decides which stories are amplified, which are diminished, which survive, and whose version of history is ultimately remembered? Because history is not only about what happened, it is also about what is remembered. Colonizers rarely control a civilization forever, but they often shape how future generations of that civilization remember themselves, sometimes to the point where their glorious history and traditions are labeled as mythology. Search engines gave us information. Artificial intelligence increasingly gives us interpretation. And if interpretation itself becomes infrastructure, who gets to tell your story? A few years ago, ordering groceries online often meant waiting until the next day, sometimes longer. Today, millions expect groceries to arrive within minutes, not because companies suddenly became more generous, but because competition forced innovation. Zepto, Blinkit, Instamart. They forced even global giants like Amazon to adapt, serve better, move faster, and lower friction for the consumer. The more alternatives people have, the more influence they have over how a system evolves. Dependence removes that leverage. The same principle applies far beyond grocery delivery. Not very long ago, buying something often meant a familiar ritual. Finding an ATM, withdrawing cash, carrying it with you, and hoping it lasted until the end of the day. Many small shopkeepers preferred cash anyway, unwilling to absorb card transaction fees on every sale. Today, millions transfer money instantly through a QR code. More importantly, participation became effectively free for the citizen. Identity faced a similar challenge. Physical documents had to be carried everywhere, sometimes forgotten, lost, or damaged. Today, for millions of Indians, identity travels with them in their phone. Aadhaar transformed identity into a reusable digital layer accessible at population scale. Healthcare faced the same problem. A cataract remained untreated. A knee replacement was postponed, not because treatment did not exist, but because it remained beyond reach. Ayushman Bharat changed that equation for millions of families, often at no direct cost to the beneficiary. Look closely, and the pattern becomes clear. Payments, identity, healthcare. In each case, India attempted to transform a service available to some into infrastructure accessible to all, not by making participation slightly cheaper, but by driving the cost of participation towards zero for the citizen. And as intelligence itself becomes infrastructure, the same question appears again. Who owns the data? Who trains the models? Who shapes the interpretations? Because sovereignty is no longer only about protecting borders. It is about ensuring that your economic and digital future is not entirely shaped by systems controlled outside your borders. Which leads to a much older question. Who is actually in control? That question is far older than artificial intelligence, far older than social media, far older than modern technology itself. Many people see the Bhagavad Gita as a philosophical conversation between Arjuna and Krishna. But beneath the philosophy lies a surprisingly practical question. Arjuna is not asking how to conquer a kingdom. He is asking how to govern himself, how to master his mind when confronted by attachments, new perceptions, and competing versions of reality. In many ways, it is the same question we have been exploring throughout this video. Because beneath questions of money, desire, attention, memory, and sovereignty lies a deeper question. Who is actually in control? A civilization that cannot tell its own story loses sovereignty. A nation that cannot control its critical infrastructure loses sovereignty. And an individual who cannot govern their own mind loses sovereignty too. Long before algorithms competed for attention, long before artificial intelligence competed to shape interpretation, the Bhagavad Gita identified the same battlefield, not a battlefield of territory, but a battlefield of consciousness. Perhaps the question was never why we feel broke. Money was only the beginning. The deeper question is whether we have surrendered ownership of our attention, our desires, our memories, our stories, our understanding, and ultimately ourselves. If you found value in this video, give it a like and share it with someone who might enjoy it too. Subscribe to GyaanGatha. Until next time, keep questioning the obvious.